Now I'm going to teach you how to play Dungeon Command. Dungeon Command is a tactical miniatures game that uses cards as its driving combat mechanic rather than dice. The goal of the game is to reduce your opponent's morale to 0. As soon as that occurs, the game is over, and the player whose morale is not reduced to 0 is the winner. You can also win if your opponent ends his or her turn with no creatures on the battlefield. Each box of Dungeon Command contains enough to play one faction. So to set up a full game like we have here, you'll need at least 2 sets. The game, most obviously, comes with 12 glorious miniatures. It also includes a number of cards that you'll use for the D&D Adventure series of games, which won't have any bearing on this game. You can set them aside. In addition, each box comes with 2 commanders. At the top of the commander card, you'll see its name. Underneath that, its special ability. Below that, you'll see your creature hand size. This is how many creature cards you'll draw up to during the cleanup phase. And your starting order hand size. This is how many cards you'll draw at the beginning of the game. And over here, you'll see a morale tracker and a leadership tracker with starting points. The starting points vary from leader to leader. Morale is essentially your life points or hit points for the game, and when they're reduced to 0, you lose. Your leadership is how many creatures in total you can have on the battlefield by level. In other words, if you start with 8 leadership, then you can have 8 levels worth of creatures on the battlefield. You can start with, for instance, a level 5 creature and a level 3 creature. The game also comes with creature cards to match all the miniatures. The creature cards have the following stats. At the top, you'll see the name of the creature and the hit points. In the corner, you'll see its level, and beneath that, several traits that it can possess. These traits and level will combine to allow the creature to play various order cards. Over here, you'll see the creature's attacks. If you see a sword, it's a melee attack, and a bow denotes a ranged attack. Next to a bow, you'll see a number in parentheses, which is the number of spaces it can attack, and that denotes the range. At the bottom, you may find some special abilities, such as the Troll's Regeneration. The game also has a number of order cards. The order cards follow a somewhat similar format. At the top, you'll see the level and trait. Your creature must possess at least this level and this trait in order to play the card. 2 creatures that both possess the trait can team up to add their levels together by spending actions. At the bottom, you'll see the effects of the card, and if it's relevant, you may see a certain requirement for the card, such as this card that requires a humanoid type creature. And at the bottom, if the card has any attachment effects, they will be listed in a little colored box. Also important to note is that this card can be played by any type of creature. It does not have to possess a particular trait. The game also comes with a few boards, which you'll put together to form the battlefield, and a lot of different tokens. You'll see numbered tokens for damage, these kite-shaped tokens, which will be used to track your morale and leadership, and finally, these numbered triangles. You'll have 8 pairs of these numbered triangles, and they're used to denote different creatures that are identical in their miniature. For instance, you may play 2 drow house guards. If you do that, you'll place numbered triangles next to the guards and a corresponding numbered triangle on the guard's card. Before playing a game of Dungeon Command, you must first decide whether you'd like to use a pre-constructed squad, as comes in the box, or if you'd like to build your own warband. If you're using a pre-built squad, simply choose one of the 2 leaders that comes in the box and move on to the next step. If, however, you'd like to build your own, you'll choose at least 30 order cards and at least 12 creature cards and put them into decks. You can have no more than 4 of any creature and 4 of any order. Now that you've built your warband, or you've chosen one from the box, you'll move on to building the map. You and your opponent agree to play either an outdoor map, as we've set up here, or an indoor map. When building the map, you'll place the 4 center tiles so that they connect to form a square. Then, you'll place the 2 start tiles so that they are closest to each of the players. In other words, if I'm the goblin player, I have to have the goblin start zone as far to my side of the table as possible. Then, you'll place all the treasure tokens with the number sides face down randomly on the 6 treasure spaces. As soon as a creature moves onto one of these treasure spaces, you'll reveal it, remove the token, and replace it with a number of actual treasures equal to the number displayed. Finally, you'll create your starting party. When you do so, you'll look through your entire creature deck, choose creatures that add up in levels to your total starting leadership, and then place them all in your start zone outlined in the dotted line. After that, you'll shuffle your remaining creatures to form your creature deck, shuffle your order cards into an order deck, and draw a number of order cards and creature cards equal to your creature hand and starting order hand size. Now you're ready to begin the game. Dungeon Command is played on alternating turns, with each turn following 4 phases. The first phase is Refresh. In the Refresh phase, you'll first resolve any start of turn effects. These will be listed on cards or on monster abilities. Then, you will untap all of your creatures. When you untap a creature, you will move it from horizontal back to vertical. Creatures will be tapped throughout the course of the game when they act or when cards are played on them. Finally, you'll draw 1 order card from the top of your order deck. There is no hand limit for the number of order cards you can hold at a time. Phase 2 of your turn is the activation phase. In this phase, you'll activate each of your creatures in sequence. You can choose the order of activation, and you can change the order every turn. When a creature activates, it can do a few things. It can move up to its speed, which I'll explain later. It can use creature powers, including making attacks, which I'll explain later. And it can play order cards. When a creature goes to play an order card, it must be of sufficient level and possess the trait depicted on the order card, unless the order card has affinity for a specific creature type, such as affinity for Drow, making a Drow creature without the sufficient attribute able to play the card. The order cards come in 3 main flavors: standard actions, immediate actions, and minor actions. Standard and immediate actions both tap the creature when they are used and prevent the creature from doing other things that would require it to tap. A standard action must be played only on the creature's individual activation. An immediate action, by contrast, can be played in response to other events. Immediate actions usually prevent damage from one source. Finally, minor actions do not cause the creature to tap, and therefore you can play as many minor actions on a given creature as you like. One of the things a creature could do on its activation is to move. A movement must be uninterrupted. In other words, you cannot move a certain number of spaces, then take a different action, then continue moving. When your creature moves, it can go a number of spaces up to its speed value, and it can move diagonally at a cost of 1 per space. However, your creature cannot move diagonally around hard corners, such as those found on the indoor maps. In addition, a creature must stop moving as soon as it becomes adjacent to an enemy creature. Also, if a creature begins movement adjacent to an enemy creature, its speed is reduced to 1. There are several different types of terrain on the map, which can also slow or hinder movement. Walls, such as those along the outside of the map, and variously on the inside, block line of sight and block movement. Difficult terrain, denoted by the triangle, does not block line of sight, but costs 1 extra point of movement in order to enter the space. If a large creature enters difficult terrain, it must only spend 1 extra point, even though its base may be entering 2 difficult spaces at once. The fires here, denoted by the weird diamond-y shape, are treated as hazardous terrain. This terrain is the same as difficult terrain. However, the first time a creature enters hazardous terrain on a turn, it receives 10 damage. In addition, at the end of your turn, any creatures still in hazardous terrain receive an additional 10 damage. There are also obstacles, shown by squares. Obstacles work like difficult terrain, except they also block line of sight. Creatures can have various movement abilities, which will mitigate these factors. A creature with flying can freely move through enemy creatures without stopping. In addition, a flying creature ignores all terrain types except for walls. A creature with the burrow ability has the same benefits, but can also ignore walls for the purpose of movement. However, a burrowing creature cannot end its movement in a wall. When you shift or slide a creature, shifting refers to moving your own creatures, while sliding simply refers to moving enemies, you do not worry about the rules regarding ending movement as soon as you reach an enemy, or having your speed at 1 when you begin adjacent to an enemy. Certain abilities, such as Scuttle, means that a creature can shift every time it moves. Otherwise, you'll simply be granted shifts from your order cards. One of the things a creature can do on its activation is to make an attack. Attacks are considered creature powers, and any attacks a creature possesses are displayed along the left side of the card. You'll see the attack damage, and if it's a ranged attack, next to that, you'll see the range in parentheses. To make a melee attack, you will choose one enemy creature that is adjacent to your creature, tap your attacking creature, and deal damage to the enemy equal to the damage displayed. If you're making a ranged attack, you must not be adjacent to the enemy creature, and you must have line of sight to it. Again, you'll tap your creature to make the attack and check for line of sight. Line of sight is determined by drawing a straight line from the corner of any square your creature is in to one corner or multiple corners of your opponent's square. If you can draw a straight line, note that enemy creatures, walls, and obstacles all block line of sight, but your own creatures do not. If you can draw a straight line from your creature to all four corners of the opposing creature's square, then the opponent does not have cover. Otherwise, the creature does possess cover. A creature with cover can choose to, as an immediate reaction, tap in order to dodge a ranged attack. When it dodges a ranged attack, it receives no damage and suffers no other ill effects from that attack. In addition, if a creature chooses, it can instead cower in order to reduce damage that it would take from an attack. When a creature cowers, you do not tap it. Instead, all the damage that would have been dealt to the creature is instead absorbed by your warband's morale. So, for every 10 points of damage that the creature would have received, you instead receive 1 damage to your morale. You may not do any sort of combination of cowering and direct damage. You must choose to have it all go into your morale or all go into the creature. In addition, any damage that would exceed the creature's hit points would still be dealt to your morale if you choose to cower. Finally, if a creature receives damage equal to its hit points or greater, it is destroyed. When a creature is destroyed, you'll deduct its level from your current morale. If I, for instance, lose my beloved troll, I will reduce my morale by 5. The last common type of activation is to collect treasure. If a creature moves over a space containing a previously unrevealed treasure token, you'll reveal the token and then replace it with a number of actual treasure pieces equal to that number. From that point on, if a creature is standing on a treasure space, it can use an action to tap and then collect that treasure. When you collect a treasure, you'll increase your morale by 1. Phase 3 of your turn is the deployment phase. At the beginning of the deployment phase, you'll increase your leadership score by 1. Your leadership is the measure of the total levels of creatures you can have on the battlefield at one time. Then you can deploy new creatures from your hand. When you do so, you'll play a creature card from your hand as long as its level does not make you exceed your current leadership. When determining level for this purpose, you do not use any level modifiers from cards or creature effects. The fourth and final phase of your turn is cleanup. In the cleanup phase, you'll first resolve any end of turn effects as listed on cards or creature abilities. Then, you will untap all of your tapped creatures, just as you did in phase 1. Third, you will draw creature cards back up to your creature hand. And finally, you will check for game end. What this means is that at the end of your turn, if you have no creatures in play, you automatically lose the game. You keep playing until one player's morale is reduced to 0, or one player has no creatures in play at the end of his turn, and then the game ends. Now you know how to play Dungeon Command.